Welcome, everyone. Today, I want to tell you something that is uncomfortable, something most people feel deeply, but almost nobody says out loud. Have you ever noticed that when you had less money, people treated you differently? Maybe they interrupted you more in conversations. Maybe your ideas were ignored in meetings. Maybe you asked for something simple, a favor, a little help, a small opportunity, and people looked through you like you were not quite there. And then maybe things changed. Maybe you got a better job or a promotion or some visible success, and suddenly the same people who looked through you were looking at you, calling you, inviting you, listening carefully to the things you said. Nothing about you had changed, but everything about how you were treated had. That experience is not paranoia. It is not bitterness. It is one of the most honest things the world will ever show you. And most people, when they feel it, look away from it quickly because it is too painful to face. Today, we are not going to look away. In the next 30 minutes, I am going to help you understand what is really happening when people respond to money instead of you, and more importantly, how to build the kind of genuine, unshakable respect that no financial change can give you and no financial loss can take away. Please listen until the end. This is one of the most important things I have ever wanted to say. Now, I want to be careful here. This is not a story about hating money. Money is real, it matters, it changes lives. Nobody is served by pretending otherwise. And this is not a story about hating people who treat others differently based on wealth. Most of them do not even realize they are doing it. It is deeply human, deeply old, and deeply worth understanding. What this story is about is something more precise: the difference between conditional respect and earned respect. Conditional respect is respect that arrives because of what you have. Earned respect is respect that arrives because of who you are. Today's method is called the Respect Foundation. It has 6 chapters. Each one addresses a different layer of how genuine respect is built, slowly, quietly, in ways that outlast any title, any salary, any circumstance. If you are ready to understand one of the deepest truths about how human beings actually treat each other, subscribe to our channel right now, because this is the kind of story we tell here. Now, let us begin. Chapter 1: The Mirror That Lies. Let me tell you about a man named Kwame. Kwame was 35 years old. He had grown up in a modest family in a large city. He was intelligent, warm, quietly funny. He had good ideas and a generous heart. But for most of his 20s, he was invisible. At work, his suggestions were nodded at politely and then forgotten. At family gatherings, the conversation moved around him like water around a stone. When he spoke in meetings, people checked their phones. He was not unkind, he was not uninteresting. He was simply not rich. And in the world he lived in, that meant he was not quite real to people. Then, at 32, Kwame's small technology business began to grow. Not dramatically at first, but visibly. He moved to a better neighborhood. He drove a different car. He wore clothes that fit him well. And the world changed around him. The same colleagues who had forgotten his suggestions now asked for his opinion before meetings began. The same relatives who had talked over him now grew quiet when he entered a room. Strangers at events held eye contact longer. People laughed more readily at his jokes. Doors that had previously required a phone call and a wait now opened on the first knock. Kwame noticed all of it, and instead of feeling happy, he felt, very quietly, something like grief. Not because he didn't appreciate the change, but because he understood now with perfect clarity what it meant. They were never ignoring me, they were ignoring my circumstances. And I was in those circumstances, and to them, that was the same thing. What Kwame experienced has a name in sociology. It is called status deference, the almost automatic human tendency to allocate attention, trust, and respect based on visible markers of social standing. It is ancient. Long before money existed, humans used physical size, tribal rank, hunting skill, any visible signal that someone was worth following. Money is simply the modern version of that signal. Visible, measurable, unmistakable. And here is the difficult truth. This tendency is not cruelty. It is not malice. It is the inherited software of a species that needed, for millions of years, to quickly assess who was powerful and who was not. You are not being rejected as a person. You are being read as a signal. That distinction does not remove the pain, but it changes the response. Because if the problem is that people are reading a signal, then the solution is to change what signals you send. Not by faking wealth, not by performing status, but by building something real that signals, I am worth your respect in a language much deeper than money. That is what the rest of this story is about. Chapter 2. The Signal of Certainty. The first and most powerful signal human beings read from each other is not wealth. It is certainty. Certainty in how you speak, certainty in how you carry yourself, certainty in how you make decisions. Research in behavioral psychology, particularly studies by Amy Cuddy at Harvard Business School, shows that the two dimensions people assess immediately and almost unconsciously are warmth and competence. But beneath both of those is something even more fundamental. Do you seem certain of your own value? People who project self-certainty are treated with significantly more respect, regardless of their income, their appearance, their title, than people who project doubt. And most people who feel disrespected are, without realizing it, projecting doubt. In how they begin sentences. I might be wrong, but. In how they laugh apologetically before making a point. In how they shrink when someone looks unimpressed. In how they justify themselves when no one asked. These small signals broadcast continuously and clearly, I am not sure I deserve your attention. And the world, reading that signal, tends to agree. The technique I want to give you is called the certainty edit. It is not about becoming arrogant. It is about removing the signals of unnecessary doubt from the way you communicate. Here is how to practice it. For 1 week, notice the following patterns in your speech. Apologetic openers. Sorry to bother you, but. I might be wrong, but. This is probably a silly question. Replace them with direct ones. I want to ask you something. I think, or simply state the thought. I have a question. Filler phrases that signal uncertainty. Kind of, sort of, maybe. I was just thinking that perhaps. Replace them with clear statements. I think, I want, the answer is. This is not about sounding aggressive. It is about sounding present. A person who speaks with quiet certainty, who says what they mean without surrounding it in apologetic wrapping, signals something very important. I know I am worth listening to. And the world, reading that signal clearly, begins, slowly, genuinely, to agree. Let me tell you about a woman named Priscilla. Priscilla was a junior architect. She was technically excellent, her ideas were strong, but in meetings, nobody seemed to hear her. Then she noticed something. Every time she made a suggestion, she began with, "This might not work, but what if we—" She started a new practice. Every morning before work, she reviewed her 3 biggest ideas for the day, and she rehearsed beginning each one directly. Here is what I think we should do. The first time she did it in a meeting, she felt terrified. But nobody laughed. Nobody interrupted. The room got a little quieter. A colleague found her afterward and said, "That was a good point. I'd never heard you make it so clearly before." Priscilla thought, "I've been saying it for 2 years. I just never let myself say it like I believed it." Chapter 3. The Signal of Boundaries. The second signal people read, and one of the most powerful, is whether you have clear personal limits. People who have no limits are treated like people who have no value. This sounds harsh, but it is simply true. When you say yes to everything, when you never push back, never decline, never redirect, you signal something very specific. My time and attention are available to anyone at any cost at any moment. And things that are always available freely to anyone, we do not tend to treat as precious. Conversely, a person who says no with ease, who declines what does not serve them without lengthy explanation, who redirects conversations that disrespect them, that person signals something different. I know what I am worth, and I protect it accordingly. That kind of person creates in others a feeling they rarely examine. I should treat this person carefully because they will notice if I don't. The technique here is called the quiet no. The quiet no has 3 parts. Part 1, the decision. Before any interaction where you might feel pressure, a request, a meeting, a social situation, decide in advance what your limit is, what you will do and what you will not. Part 2, the delivery. When the moment comes, say no simply, without a long explanation, without apology. I won't be able to do that. That doesn't work for me. I'm not going to agree to that. Notice not I can't, but I won't. Can't signals inability. Won't signals choice. And respect follows choice, not inability. Part 3, the silence. After the no, be quiet. Do not rush to fill the silence with justification. Let the no stand. The silence itself communicates, I have said what needs saying. I don't need your approval to feel comfortable with it. Let me tell you about a man named Erlen. Erlen was a software developer. He was known at his company as someone who always helped, always available, always willing to stay late, take the extra task, solve the extra problem. He thought this would earn him respect. Instead, he found himself perpetually tired and treated quietly as a resource rather than a person. His manager would assign him extra work without asking. Colleagues would forward problems to him without thanks. Nobody thought to ask, is this too much? because nobody had ever seen a limit to cross. One Thursday, a colleague sent a message at 8 p.m. asking Erlen to fix a non-urgent error before the next morning. Erlen typed, deleted, and retyped his response several times. Finally, he sent, "I won't be able to do that tonight. I can look at it first thing tomorrow." And then he closed his laptop. The colleague wrote back 20 minutes later, "No problem. Tomorrow is fine." That was it. No drama, no consequence. But something changed in Erlen after that evening. He felt for the first time in years that he had a shape, that he occupied space in a different, more solid way. Over the following months, Erlen said no more often, simply, quietly, without apology. And the people around him, almost without noticing it, began to treat him differently. Not because he had changed his salary, but because he had changed his signal. We are halfway through our story today, and I want to pause and ask you something honest. When you heard about the certainty edit, did you recognize yourself in Priscilla? Do you surround your ideas with apologetic wrapping before you share them? And when you heard about the quiet no, did you recognize yourself in Erlen? Is there someone in your life you have been afraid to say no to? Leave a comment below and tell me which of these two you need most. Not because I will judge your answer, but because naming it, writing it down, making it visible is itself the first step toward changing it. And if this story is telling you something true, please like this video right now. It helps more people who need this message find it. Now, let's go deeper.
Chapter 4. The Signal of Selective Presence. Here is something that very few people understand about respect. Scarcity creates value. Not artificial scarcity, not game playing, but the genuine natural scarcity of a person whose attention is not freely available to everyone. Think about the people in your life whom you respect most deeply. Not the ones who were always available. The ones who, when they gave you their time, made you feel that their time was genuinely worth something. Because they gave it selectively, with care, with intention, not to everyone who asked. This is called the principle of selective presence, and it is one of the quietest signals of genuine respect. When you are always available, always answering immediately, always accepting every invitation, always present in every conversation, you become ambient, like background noise. Familiar, comforting, but not remarkable. When you are present selectively, when your responses come when you have something real.
When your responses come when you have something real to say, when your attendance at an event means something because you are not at every event, when your focused attention on someone is rare enough to feel like a gift, people treat that presence differently. The technique here is called the intentional pause. For 1 week, practice these 3 things. 1. Do not reply to non-urgent messages immediately. Wait between 30 minutes and 2 hours. Not to be difficult, but to stop training people that your attention arrives the moment they request it. 2. Before accepting any invitation, pause for 24 hours, then decide. Not every invitation deserves yes.
Not every meeting deserves your presence. Choose the ones that do, and let the choosing itself signal value. 3. In conversations, speak less than you want to. Ask one question and listen fully before adding your perspective. Leave small silences where others expect you to fill. Let what you say carry more weight because you say less of it.
Let me tell you about a woman named Marlene. Marlene was a consultant, smart, thorough, well regarded in her field. But she had a habit of saying yes to everything and everyone. Every request for her time, every question in her email, every lunch invitation. She thought, being available is being helpful. Being helpful is being respected. But what she had created over years was a different impression. Marlene is always available, so her time is easy to get, so it isn't worth much. 1 month, Marlene made one change. She stopped replying to emails within minutes. She began to pause before saying yes. She spoke less in meetings, and what she said became shorter and more precise. Within 3 weeks, something subtle but unmistakable had shifted. Colleagues who had emailed casually before now wrote more carefully, as if they were aware her attention was worth the effort. A client said in a meeting, "I wanted to make sure I had your thoughts on this, specifically, not from the group, yours." Marlene had not changed what she knew. She had changed what it cost to access what she knew, and the world had adjusted its assessment accordingly. Chapter 5. The Signal of Consistent Excellence. Here is a truth that is easy to say and hard to live. Respect that lasts is built in private, not in public declarations, not in self-promotion, not in the clothes you wear or the titles you collect. It is built in the quality of what you do when nobody is watching and nobody is applauding. Every field has an open secret. The people who are most deeply respected are not always the loudest or the most visible. They are the ones whose work is consistently, quietly excellent. The colleague whose reports are always clear and on time. The professional who answers questions with precision and honesty. The friend who shows up when they said they would, every time without exception. These people build something that money cannot buy and money cannot remove. A reputation for reliability. And reputation, quiet, slow-built, deeply earned reputation, is the most durable form of respect that exists. The technique here is called the excellence ledger. At the end of each day, ask yourself one question. What did I do today that I would be proud of, even if nobody saw it? Write the answer. One line, one thing. Some days the answer will be small. I finished the report before the deadline, even though nobody was checking.
I told a difficult truth when a comfortable lie was available. I helped someone who couldn't return the favour. Over time, this practice builds two things. First, it trains your attention toward excellence, because you know each evening you will need something to write. Second, it builds an honest archive of your own character. Evidence in your own handwriting of the person you actually are. And on the days when the world seems to see only your circumstances, when money or status or visibility is low, you can return to that ledger and remember something the world cannot tell you. I know what I am worth. I have seen it in writing every day. Let me tell you about a man named Remy. Remy was a teacher in a secondary school, not a wealthy profession, not a high-status one. He drove an old car. He lived in a modest apartment. By the signals the world uses most often, Remy was not someone to be particularly impressed by. But in his school, among students, parents, and even other teachers, Remy was treated with a quality of respect that had nothing to do with his salary. His lessons were always prepared. His feedback was always honest and kind. When he said he would do something, it was done. When he didn't know an answer, he said so, and then came back the next day with it. A student once asked him, "Mr. Remy, why do people listen to you? You're just a teacher." Remy thought about it for a moment. Then he said, quietly, "Because I have never given them a reason not to." That was it. Not wealth, not power, not status. Never a reason not to. 12 years of consistent, quiet, excellent showing up. And the respect that had accumulated from students who became adults, from parents who became advocates, from colleagues who became friends, was the kind that no financial change could touch, because it was never about his money. It was about his character. And character compounds, slowly and surely, the same way interest builds in a well-managed account. You have now completed one of the most honest conversations this channel has ever offered. Today, you did not just learn about money and respect. You learned why people confuse the two, and that this confusion is ancient, human, and not personal. You learned the certainty edit, how to remove the doubt from your words and let your certainty signal your value before anyone asks for proof. You learned the quiet no, how limits, delivered simply, communicate worth more powerfully than any amount of effort to please. You learned the intentional pause, how selective presence makes your attention a gift rather than a given. You learned the excellence ledger, how quiet, consistent, private excellence builds the only reputation that financial change cannot touch. And you learned the sufficiency practice, the most powerful signal of all, knowing what you already are before you walk into any room. You were not someone who needs wealth to be worth respecting. You were someone who was never given the right signals to send. Now you have them. Use them. Not to perform, not to impress, but to finally let the world see, clearly and consistently, what you have always been. Subscribe to our channel right now if this story opens something in you. We are building a community here of people who want real understanding of themselves, of the world, and of the English language that connects it all. Save this video. Return to it on the days when the world reads you wrong. Use each pillar like a quiet act of self-respect. One more brick in the foundation of a person who does not need the world to tell them they are worthy. Because the most important truth of this entire episode is this: respect that lasts does not come from what you have. It comes from who you are, expressed clearly, consistently, and without apology, every ordinary day of your life.
Speak with certainty. Say no with ease. Do excellent work in the quiet, and need less from the world, because you know what you already carry. And most of all, let the world learn your worth, not from your wallet, but from the way you live. Thank you for watching. Let's grow together.